Miss Ying Ning, or, The Laughing Girl Part 2. As it was a private house he did not venture to go in, but sat down to rest himself on a huge, smooth stone opposite the front door. By and by he heard a girl's voice from within calling out Xiao Yung, and, noticing that it was a sweet-toned voice, set himself to listen, when a young lady passed with a bunch of apricot flowers in her hand, and occupied in putting hairpins into her downcast head. As soon as she raised her face she saw Wang, and stopped putting in hairpins, then, smothering a laugh, picked a few flowers and ran in. Wang perceived to his intense delight that she was none other than his heroine of the Feast of Lanterns, but recollecting that he had no right to follow her in, was on the point of calling after her as his cousin. There was no one, however, in the street, and he was afraid lest he might have made a mistake, neither was there anybody at the door of whom he could make inquiries. So he remained there in a very restless state till the sun was well down in the west, and his hopes were almost at an end, forgetting all about food and drink. He then saw the young lady peep through the door, apparently very much astonished to find him still there, and in a few minutes out came an old woman, leaning on a stick, who said to him, "Whence do you come, sir? I hear you have been here ever since morning. What is it you want? Aren't you hungry?" Wang got up, and making a bow, replied that he was in search of some relatives of his, but the old woman was deaf and didn't catch what he said, so he had to shout it out again at the top of his voice. She asked him what their names were, but he was unable to tell her, at which she laughed and said, "It is a funny thing to look for people when you don't know their names. I am afraid you are an unpractical gentleman. You had better come in and have something to eat. We'll give you a bed and you can go back tomorrow and find out the names of the people you are in quest of." Now Wang was just beginning to get hungry, and, besides, this would bring him nearer to the young lady, so he readily accepted and followed the old woman in. They walked along a paved path, banked on both sides with hibiscus, the leaves of which were scattered about on the ground, and passing through another door, entered a courtyard full of trained creepers and other flowers. The old woman showed Wang into a small room with beautifully white walls and a branch of a crab-apple tree coming through the window, the furniture being also nice and clean. They had hardly sat down when it was clear that someone was taking a peep through the window, whereupon the old woman cried out, "Xiao Yung! Make haste and get dinner," and a maid from outside immediately answered, "Yes, ma'am." Meanwhile, Wang had been explaining who he was, and then the old lady said, "Was your maternal grandfather named Wu?" "He was," replied Wang. "Well, I never," cried the old woman, "he was my uncle, and your mother and I are cousins. But in consequence of our poverty, and having no sons, we have kept quite to ourselves, and you have grown to be a man without my knowing you." "I came here," said Wang, "about my cousin, but in the hurry I forgot your name." "My name is Qin," replied the old lady. "I have no son, only a girl, the child of a concubine, who, after my husband's death, married again and left her daughter with me. She's a clever girl, but has had very little education, full of fun and ignorant of the sorrows of life. I'll send for her by and by to make your acquaintance." The maid then brought in the dinner a large dish full of choice morsels of fowl, and the old woman pressed him to eat. When they had finished, and the things were taken away, the old woman said, "Call Miss Ning," and the maid went off to do so. After some time there was a giggling at the door, and the old woman cried out, "Ying Ning! Your cousin is here." There was then a great tittering as the maid pushed her in, stopping her mouth all the time to try and keep from laughing. "Don't you know better than to behave like that?" asked the old woman, "and before a stranger, too." So Ying Ning controlled her feelings, and Wang made her a bow. The old woman saying, "Mr. Wang is your cousin, you have never seen him before. Isn't that funny?" Wang asked how old his cousin was, but the old woman didn't hear him, and he had to say it again, which sent Ying Ning off into another fit of laughter. "I told you," observed the old woman, "she hadn't much education, now you see it. She is 16 years old, and as foolish as a baby. 1 year younger than I am," remarked Wang. "Oh, you're 17 are you? Then you were born in the year, under the sign of the horse." Wang nodded assent, and then the old woman asked who his wife was, to which Wang replied that he had none. "What, a clever, handsome young fellow of 17 not yet engaged? Ying Ning is not engaged either, you two would make a nice pair if it wasn't for the relationship." Wang said nothing, but looked hard at his cousin, and just then the maid whispered to her, "It is the fellow with the wicked eyes. He's at his old game." Ying Ning laughed, and proposed to the maid that they should go and see if the peaches were in blossom or not, and off they went together, the former with her sleeve stuffed into her mouth until she got outside, where she burst into a hearty fit of laughing.